Hey, everybody.
Hello.
Welcome back to After the Sermon. My name's Justin.
I'm Carrie.
And we are back in our Know the King sermon series. Here we are. We're studying the Gospel according to John. We started this series back in the fall, and it's a continuation of the conversation we're having about our vision statement for One Life Church, and that is to be a people bringing the kingdom of Jesus to earth, one life at a time, through intentional relationships. And during this series, we're asking, who is Jesus? Who is the king of this kingdom that we want to be bringing to the earth? And we want to get to know Jesus. And John's gospel does a great job of showing us who Jesus is, both as a man and as the God-man who is walking among us. And so Carrie jumped right back into this series and looked at the story in John chapter 8. And so really quickly, tell us just kind of what is John 8 about?
So John 8 is the story of the woman caught in the act of adultery. And Jesus is teaching, and the Pharisees bring forth this woman who they said was caught in the act of adultery. And what was Jesus to do about it? And we know that this was a setup. It was a trap. And Jesus knew it was a trap. And so this is where we find Jesus drawing in the dirt with his fingers. And they keep asking him questions about it. And he says, so let he who is without sin cast the first stone.
Yep. So if you haven't sinned, go ahead and throw that first rock.
Exactly.
Because the law said she's been caught in adultery, we should stone her.
Exactly. But the law also said that the man had to be stoned too.
Well, we won't, these are not important details.
But that's how he knew it was a trap.
Yes, absolutely.
And because
absolutely.
she was standing there alone.
Yep.
And the law said that the people who witnessed it needed to be the ones to throw that first stone.
Uh-huh.
And so that's how Jesus...
Ooh, putting them on the spot.
Exactly. And they knew what they had done. And so one by one, they turn around and walk away.
Okay, my first question is this. I love this story.
Me too. It's
by the way.
wonderful.
I love this story. Rob Bell, I don't know how people feel about Rob Bell, whatever. But Rob Bell used to teach on this story and talk about him writing in the dirt. And I was always intrigued by the question of what was Jesus writing in the sand?
Yeah.
We don't know.
We don't know.
We don't know. There's no way to know. The Bible doesn't tell us what he's writing. What do you think he was writing? Really quickly.
I really like the idea of him writing out the verse about being a true witness. That's a big one that he was writing that out in Hebrew about being a, there's a verse I cannot remember, but being a witness that was there just to get someone in trouble. That was possible.
Interesting. Interesting. For me, my favorite theory is that he was writing her name.
Oh, I've not heard that one.
Yeah, and I actually thought about this while you were teaching, was that in Genesis 1, God forms Adam from the dust and then breathes breath of life. And so here he is writing in the dust, writing her name, letting her know, I've known you since I created you.
I like that so much better. And this is the beauty of it. We don't know.
Yeah,
so
and this is how the rabbis would work. They would look at stories and then they would ask, how does this connect to our everyday life?
Yes.
So that's my big question for today is how does this story connect to our everyday life? You talked about family system theory. We talk about that a lot here at One Life. Amongst our staff, we talk about how every system of a group of people, so whether it's our staff or our individual families or our friendships, our workplaces, these are called family systems. And there are all these dynamics in them. And what we see in this story is that Jesus does not elevate his anxiety to the anxiety of the system.
Yes.
There's a ton of anxiety in this system in John 8, where the woman is experiencing anxiousness, that the Pharisees are experiencing a level of anxiousness because of what Jesus is teaching, but then also this situation, and then being caught that they are setting this woman up. There's so much anxiety in this system.
Yeah.
But what we see, and you talked about this, is brilliant, that Jesus did not elevate his anxiety to meet the anxiety of the system. Rather, he stayed calm. Some say a non-anxious presence. I like a calm presence.
Yes.
He stayed calm. He knelt down. He wrote in the sand, taking a deep breath, knowing what the Father is doing, and then speaking into the anxiety of the system. I think that every I don't think every one of us experience this kind of anxious system. How would you, what thoughts do you have about that? Like, what are you learning about that? Because that's a place where this story connects to our everyday life.
Yeah. You know, one of the things I've learned, and I am not the kind of person that will rise to the level of anxiety often. I do get very overwhelmed when there's a lot of anxiousness, and I retreat. One thing that I think I'm learning is the problem does not have to be solved right then, in that exact nanosecond. There is no harm, and in fact, there's a lot of benefit in everybody just taking a break.
Just hitting the pause button.
Hit the pause button.
That's what we see
Go
Jesus
to your own
doing.
corners. Exactly.
Yeah, man,
Think
that's
about
so
it.
good. Yeah, so we talk about, we're doing staff training with Jim Harrington and his team. And he talks about that there's different ways that we react to anxiousness.
Exactly.
And so we can over function, we can under function, we can elevate to that level of anxiety and become like we can create more conflict, we can retreat. And so you were saying that yours is retreat.
Or overfunction.
Or overfunction.
Yes, or I will try to solve all the problems before they become problems. And I'm the dog in the fiery room saying this is fine. So it's a matter of finding the middle ground, the function.
Yeah. So for me, mine is overfunction. A lot of people actually, and you may be watching this and thinking, well, Justin's a conflict guy. And I think that's a misconception of, I'm an Enneagram 8. I'm a high D on the disc, all those things. So everybody thinks, well, then you must love conflict. I actually don't. I actually don't like it. And so for me, in those situations when the anxiety is rising, I actually overfunction to overcompensate for what is taking place in, like, for the underfunctioning that's happening in the circle, right? And so I would, as an Enneagram 8, probably like swoop this woman up and like take off, running, or I would like create an argument of why she has been, an injustice has happened. Right?
Yeah.
And so this story is so beautiful to me because in those moments, rather than overfunctioning, rather than conflict, rather than retreating, rather than underfunctioning, like pushing that pause button in those moments where you feel the anxiety rising in your system, at work, in your home, with your kids, with your spouse, with your friendships, whatever it may be, push that pause button, take a deep breath, and ask, how can I be a calm presence in this moment?
Exactly. Or I would even say, pause the button, and the first question you ask is, what am I doing here?
What am I feeling?
What am I feeling? Yeah, actually. So
well, that's scary, Carrie.
That is. I've been in a few classes for parenting and that kind of thing, and that was one of the things that the instructor told us is, when you feel that anxiety rising because of something your kid is doing, don't put it on them, put it on you. What is it doing to me?
Okay.
And why am I overfunctioning? Am I underfunctioning? What am I doing?
Yeah.
Turn the mirror on yourself.
Yeah.
Pause.
Yeah.
And then.
so here's some good action steps from this Sunday's teaching then. One is when you feel like the anxiety is rising in the system, wherever you find yourself, hit the pause button.
Yeah.
It's okay. You don't have to react right away. You don't have to run away. You don't have to lean in. You don't have to create more conflict. Just hit the pause button and ask the question, what am I feeling?
Yeah.
How is this making me feel right now?
Exactly.
And then you may be able to take a step towards how can I be a sense of calm and non-anxiousness in this space? How can I bring more calm? How can I make peace? Not keep peace, but make peace in this system. But we have to do some self-examination before we can get there.
Absolutely.
All right, so I have another thing that I want to talk about this teaching, and that was there was a quote from, what was the guy's name?
Gary Burge. From
Gary
the
Burge.
Commentary.
We've been using his commentary, and what did he say?
Jesus had different reflexes.
Reflexes to
Sin.
So this story is showing us what Jesus's reflexes were to sin. Now, Jesus didn't overlook the woman's sin, and he didn't overlook the sin of the Pharisees.
No.
But he had different reflexes to it. So I have a story.
Okay.
So a few years ago, I was invited to speak at this Christian camp and it was a week for high schoolers. And I told the guy in charge that I would love to do a Q&A after one of the. You've had this experience,
Done it.
so this was kind of probably mid 2000s. So things were starting to heat up. Conversations around sexuality, gender, the church's relationship with the LGBTQ community, like all of that was bubbling, and the high schoolers were having these conversations before the adults were. And so I'm in the Q&A. I had no idea what people were going to ask. A girl stands up and says, why does the church struggle in their relationship with this community of people, the LGBTQ community?
Yeah.
Why? And she was, I think, asking personally, like, why does my church react in the way that they do probably to her own friends?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so I'm on the spot, and the lights are bright, and I take a moment. I actually took a moment, like hit the pause button, took a deep breath because I could feel the anxiety going up in the room. And I gave the best answer that I knew how to give in that moment. And I said, it's because as human beings, we are scared of people that are not like us. I thought that was a pretty good answer.
Yeah, it's a great answer.
I didn't talk theology. I didn't talk, you should believe this, shouldn't believe this. I just stated something that is true of every human being. A few weeks later, I got a call from the guy in charge of the camp. A friend of mine said, hey, I just wanted you to know the board met and you're never allowed to come back and speak at the camp. And I was shocked because I didn't make any statement about what I believed or what people should believe or anything, just a statement about humanity, that we are scared of people that are not like us. That was a reflex.
Yeah, it was.
It was a reflex on the part of the board, and they decided to react to my answer in that way. And and I think that is how we typically react to the sin of the world.
Yeah.
It's really quickly, knee-jerk reaction. I think it's as old as Adam and Eve. Genesis 3, sin enters the world. We become afraid of each other. We begin to blame one another. And our reflexes are us versus them.
Yes.
Right? Build walls, put up barriers, like, you got to stay over there, I got to stay over here because you didn't say the thing I want. I just don't know if those reflexes are helping us.
No.
And I'm not saying what you should believe or what you shouldn't believe. Like, everybody can have their own convictions, right?
Right.
But we've got to, tell me, what's Jesus teaching us about our reflexes to sin, to hard conversations, to hard moments, to hard circumstances and situations? What do you think? What do we see in Jesus in John 8? What reflex does he teach us?
I think Jesus teaches, and I said this as my final point, compassion over condemnation. But I also think it's curiosity rather than reaction.
Yeah, that's good. Curiosity rather than reaction.
And I think we kind of have this mindset, a battle mindset.
Yes, yeah.
Of spiritual, and we use these terms, spiritual warfare, armor of God. Absolutely, we do use these terms. And we get it confused, though, that our enemy are the sinners. The world is our enemy.
Or anybody that has a different view than
or
me.
anyone that has a different view of me, or view of God, or view of sin, or anything is my enemy. But really, we have the same enemy.
Yeah, we do.
And that is what we've lost sight of. We're going to throw out lots and lots of controversial names today. So Derek Webb, who also another controversial figure, has an amazing song called A King and a Kingdom. And one of my favorite lines is, nothing unifies like a common enemy. And we've got one sure as hell. And he says, he may be raising up your kids. He may be sleeping with your wife. He may not look like you think. Because our enemy is not flesh and blood. Our enemy isn't you. It's not me. It's not those people. Our enemy is the adversary and Satan and sin and pain and hurt literally everyone is fighting that enemy.
Yeah. Yeah. So how can we become more curious? And Jesus teaches us that in John 8. He becomes curious about the reality that the woman is facing. I believe that he even becomes curious for the Pharisees all throughout the Gospels. He's always making an invitation. Does he have some harsh words for them?
Yes.
Absolutely. But he's curious, and he's inviting them closer. And man, curiosity over condemnation, curiosity over reaction. And Jesus teaches us that. And we don't have to us versus them, everyone.
No.
You know? And so what a great story. All right, we have to stop there.
Yes.
We've gone a long time. But John 8 is a fantastic story. I encourage you to read it, study it, read about it, find podcasts about it. The Bema podcast has some episodes on it. That's a great resource. Look them up on Apple Podcasts. You did a great job.
Oh,
thank you for teaching on
you.
this text.
It's my favorite story, one of the many.
Yeah, so next week we're going to jump in the story of the Good Shepherd. So
I love
it's
that
going to
one
be a
too.
lot of fun. All right, friends, thank you so much for hanging out with us. We'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.